So welcome back, everybody. And if this is your first time joining us and you didn't see us for our little sort of sip of coffee, we are here and I'm back with Mony Madlol, 17-year-old student from Oakridge Secondary School. Welcome back, Mony.
Thank you.
We had started to talk about Goodfellas, not the movie that those of us older people understand to be what that is, but a club that you started at Oakridge to support essentially the mental health and well-being of young men in your school. So what made you think that this was something that's needed? Like, what got you from this is needed to actually doing something about it?
Well, it started off with at a really young age, my father passed away, so I didn't really know what was kind of expected. I didn't know if this was like something other kids would, because I had a strong like female kind of role model in my house, but so I didn't really know about anything that went on in other households. So it was just kind of affecting me because I was like, is this something that happens? Like, do people just not talk about their feelings, or do people share it with their dad? And then you realize from movies and other stuff that it's stereotypically not like that. It's with you kind of the man of the house is the dad, and the kids are always supposed to be strong young men and not show their feelings. So it was kind of something, and I looked around and I was like, well, that can't be true, right? So I looked around to see if there's any clubs that support it, and there was no clubs that support just young men talking, like, at all. So I was like, well, maybe there is a need for this. Like, maybe we should get started with something like this. So.
Wow. And you and your brother had a conversation at some point about, hey, like, why is it that men don't talk to each other about their feelings?
It was weird. It was like a Sunday night. Like, we had school the next morning. We were up late for some reason, both of us in the basement, and we just like the topic came up somehow, and we were just like, we couldn't like understand the fact that like this wasn't a thing that people just like all around, like, we thought it was just us, but we couldn't understand that this was just a thing that all guys kind of struggled with. So
right. And how would you say, like, amongst sort of your peers or your friend group or just young men in general that you've known and seen, how does that sort of play out, that sort of we don't talk, men don't talk? You mentioned vulnerability earlier, like that's not a thing. Like, how does that play out in a way that you've seen?
well, you see it everywhere. You see the little bursts and outbreaks of like kind of physical, because that's the only way they know to express themselves, because they can't emotionally, so they have to do it physically, because you're not supposed to talk, so just fight, just do this, just do that. And then you see like all these little outbreaks. Why is this person a lot more physical when deep down they're like a really nice person? And so that's when you kind of pick up on the patterns, and it all comes together behind the fact that if you can't express yourself emotionally, that's when the physical comes in, and that's when you get into trouble. So
right. Wow. And it does a disservice to men and boys when you're not able to express yourself emotionally. Yeah. So you have you weren't born here in Canada, right? Can you tell us a little bit, or tell me a little bit about how sort of where you were born and the culture you were born into, and how that relates to this concept of healthy masculinity and some of those thoughts you've had?
well, I was born in Iraq, so it was kind of in the Middle East. There's like this is kind of just a stereotype. It's the man runs the house, and like it's like a set kind of social stats where like there's not a man running the house, then the family's as good as dead. That's what they say. So it's like it's really weird, because my father passed away when I was really young, and then immediately my family was turned away from. And like even growing up, it was like me and my brother. I had two older sisters, but me and my brother were gonna lead the family somehow. And so that just wasn't fair. And like to see my mom struggle with that, being like turned away, because now our family was as good as like nothing, just because my father passed away, and that just like wasn't true. And so like living in that toxic environment, that like where hegemonic masculinity was the only thing they kind of pushed, that was it. And so when we moved over here, it was weird, because it was like from not sharing your feelings at all, like it was like the most in that degree, and then you kind of lighten up here, but it's still no conversations about it, right? And so now when I moved to Canada, it was like the same thing. Like I look around, I'm like, this place must be different. But yeah, they have their differences. But when you look at it deep down, there's not too many differences between Iraq and Canada in terms of talking about feelings within men. So that's kind of the process.
And so you came to Canada. You've mentioned a few times that your dad passed away when you were young, and so your mom then was sort of the head of your family.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. And what have you learned from her about? Absolutely.
She is honestly the most amazing mother in the entire, like she is just me, like her by herself and 5 kids being turned away from everyone, and she somehow got us all to Canada. Like she has been the most amazing male and female role model. Like she literally, like I don't know where I would have been without her. She's the most amazing person ever, and because of her, I'm here today having this conversation with you about like healthy masculinity, and it's because of her that I'm actually like physically here today. So I cannot amazing things about her. She's an amazing woman.
So because of her, you are able to be here to talk to me about mental health for young men. Yeah. She taught you some things, did she? Yeah. Wow, Mony, that's beautiful. So you see all around you this sort of struggle that young men have expressing themselves. And you've sort of you've taken this cause on, really, haven't you? But yeah, you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, with great courage, you have taken this cause on. So what are you aware of that you, like the vulnerability, if we can say so, the vulnerability that you have had to put out there to take the cause on?
Yeah. So it's obvious that like a lot of people think of like the words like courage and like confidence and strength and like that, like just being kind of, so like those are the words like maybe when 2015 when you would use, I was courageous, I was strong, I was confident, right? But it kind of like, that's not, because without vulnerability, none of those things would have been like just available. Like I had to be able to open myself up in order for other people to see like, okay, he's opening himself up and he's okay with it and he's confident, and that way maybe they can come into the conversation being vulnerable themselves, and that way they can develop their confidence in their vulnerability. So that like eventually, and it is a courageous thing to do, because you don't understand how hard it is for some of these guys to open up, because it's never been a thing they've done before. So that's kind of, that's how it looped in with vulnerability, I guess.
It is phenomenally courageous, and I am so, like, that requires just a pause moment to acknowledge that you at the tender age of 17 have made this beautiful connection between the relationship of sort of courage, strength, and vulnerability, and that they're not separate.
It's very, very.
Have you felt courageous in taking this on? Have you felt courageous in leading the charge, essentially, at Oakridge? Has that felt courageous to you?
It's felt, honestly, it was scary at first. I'm gonna be honest, it was scary. And that, I wasn't allowed to say that though. You know what I mean? Because if you're leading at the front, you're gonna put on a strong face. You're gonna put like a smile, and you're like, you know what? It's okay, because eventually they're with me, right? And then you kind of build it up. You build up your self-esteem, and you're together. Like it's not like I'm leading like in front of them. Like we're all alongside each other, helping each other become more vulnerable, and as a result, more confident, more courageous, and it all kind of falls like in together and in line. So.
Yeah. And here you are. I don't know if you're aware, there might be a few people that will listen to this. You are you're very openly saying, I was scared. I was scared. Yeah. But you did it anyway.
100%.
Yeah.
Because it has to start somewhere, right? Like I can't just be it couldn't have, if it ended with the conversation, me and my brother like, oh well, like it'll change eventually. Like it wouldn't have, you know what I mean? And even like it's the little conversations that you have that kind of build it up. And I'm glad that we had them, and I'm glad we didn't stop, because this is something that I think is needed. And I hope like one day it becomes as big as the topic of mental health itself, and we have clubs like not just in Oakridge but everywhere kind of for it. So
yes, me too. And what is needed, what you've already talked about is needed, is sort of not only somebody like yourself who's willing to be courageous and vulnerable and take it on, but also sort of strong male role models sort of in schools too, that portray that healthy masculinity. So what would you say about that? Like if people were listening, if there were educators listening who have thought about this, what would you say about the importance of that?
well, it starts off like I don't want people to think this is like a guy exclusive club to the main level, to the foundation, because there's a saying, behind every good man is a woman, right? And behind me, like I'm behind my mom because she's amazing, right? But
Yes.
in terms of this, it's Miss McCrae who's been amazing help, and Mr. Scarpelli. So Miss McCrae and Mr. Scarpelli are both like, we're all evenly kind of in this, but Miss McCrae doesn't come to the meetings. So if you're listening, like it'd be you and like Mr. Scarps, who's a really kind of amazing male role model within the school, and someone everyone's really like known about, and someone who like everyone's really confident with, and just it's more like he's just like another student, right? So another school, like obviously had like females at the starting foundation, because that's where it starts, right? And then just kind of mesh it in, and then when you're coming to the meetings though, like start it off with just kind of like a guy, maybe a male educator. That way it feels like it's just like a guy club, and we're just kind of having conversations. That way when they come in eventually, and down the road, obviously you can have like female speakers come in, and then that's when you build it up, but it's got to start somewhere.
So you just made a really good point that it's fascinating to me that you acknowledge that it's important to have sort of females
100%.
sort of helping to lead, but a little bit behind the scenes.
100%.
Yeah. What has that female voice helping you sort of organize this and coordinate this? What has that brought to the table that you think is really important?
Well, almost everything, honestly, because it's not like we grow up just being told that we're supposed to be like big, strong, macho men, and that's all we think, right? So it's kind of like it's the only, we're not thinking we're doing any wrong, but it comes down to like the females are the ones that notice, right? They're the ones that are like, okay, well that's a little much, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, and females are the ones that are supposed to be open to sharing their feelings. So it's kind of like they have experience with it, and it starts there. So I feel like it's just like, it's always smart, because any way you go one-sided into a club, like it's gonna eventually fall to that one side. And so I feel like you need it at the beginning, like as to start a strong foundation. So
So I don't know if you're aware, but our theme through this week is Mental Health Week, and our theme through this week is hashtag TVDSB strong across the valley. And it got me to thinking actually about the concept of strength and how that concept relates to mental health in general. And that sometimes we put certain meanings on what strong means. So I'm just curious to hear from you about what you think strong means amongst your peers. You mentioned 2015 Moody, and 2015 Mooney might have thought something different about strength than what 2020 Mooney thinks. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I know some of my friends feel strength is just kind of the ability to be macho and kind of do something physical, and that's it. But honestly, like as you kind of dive deeper into this topic, you realize that it takes a lot of strength to open up, and it's strength is really, it's like we're using this word, but it's vulnerable. Like, it's when you're vulnerable and when you open up, that's when your true strength shows. And I feel like there can't be strength without vulnerability, because then you're not learning. You're not learning about yourself. You're not learning about the task you're doing. So I feel like that's just that's something that just has to come with it. So.
Right. So strength is vulnerability in your mind. Mm-hmm. And strength and vulnerability is courage in your mind. And you have demonstrated all of those things, really and truly. You have demonstrated all of those things in this passion that you have. I think that just needs to be acknowledged, that you've demonstrated all of that. So when we're talking about strength and we're talking about courage and all of those things, we're in this particular time of where, quite frankly, mental health and well-being is a worry for some people. We're all at home. We're in the midst of a pandemic. You're in grade 12 trying to figure things out. I'm just checking in with you, really, about how are you? How are you doing being at home and schooling and all of that kind of stuff?
And honestly, it doesn't help that I'm fasting right now. I can tell you that for sure. Like, it is tough with that. So I mean, it is coffee with Kelly, but there's not really too much in my cup. So it doesn't. It's pretty. But I think you gotta, just like with everyday life before this happened, it was the little things that kind of made your day. So I feel like with this kind of going on, it's once again the little things, like doing stuff to keep you sane, because like I know for me and my friends, it's we do stuff like you can't see it anymore, but I was actually growing out my beard for quite a while. It's gone now, thank goodness. Like, you guys are trust me, you did not want to see that patchy mess. But we were like, there was a bunch of us like growing out our beards, or like there was even like people shaving their heads just to kind of like keep them sane. Like you know what, like we're gonna get through this. Like, our hair is gonna go back, just like we're gonna get like over this kind of bump. So it's kind of, and it's hard because like there's ups where in terms of like the no harm rule for school marks, but there's also downs because we don't know what's gonna happen with graduation and prom. But honestly, like the little things, like I encourage everyone to kind of keep talking to their friends, keep with like the platforms of like Zoom or group FaceTime or anything where you can see and talk to your friends, because that's the only way I'm doing good. So.
And have you had moments where maybe where it's been hard and you haven't maybe been feeling so good? Have you had those moments?
100%. 100%.
Yeah. I read something on Facebook the other day that then I tweeted about because it grabbed me so much. So, and I'm going to tell you this, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about it. So, it was this little image on Facebook that was tacos, like the tacos that we eat.
Yeah.
And it said even tacos fall apart, but we still love them. And so it was about.
Oh my goodness! Honestly,
right. It was about like it's okay to fall apart because even tacos do, and they are still loved. We love tacos.
I better myself. That is the exact kind of situation for what's going on now. And it's getting me hungry, you know what I mean? So like, no, I honestly, it's perfect. I couldn't have put it better myself.
So have you had taco moments? Have you had taco moments where you fell apart?
100%. And I'm glad that my friends and my family still love me after I fall apart, and they're kind of what kind of put me back together. So yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. And can you still you still feel strong but fall apart at the same time?
I think that's what strong is. Like, if you're able to kind of stay strong while like just the resiliency in that is just kind of like it'll help you down the road so much if you just kind of develop it and just kind of go with it and be confident in your ability to do so. So
right. So you and your friends can have your taco moments
Mhm.
and still be courageous and strong and vulnerable at the same time.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. You are such an inspirational voice for young men. Like, I'm not sure if you know that, but it's true. And there's quite a possibility that there will be lots of young men that will watch you talk with me. And if there's, what would you say to them? Because there actually may be young men who may watch you and go, oh wow, that's really cool. Maybe I could do something in my school like him. Like, you could very honestly inspire people in that way. So what would you say, to the young men that are listening?
Well, I want to start off by saying, like, I know these are deep thoughts in everyone's minds. I think it's just, if you're listening, just kind of take that first step, because that's all it takes. Once you take that first step, you're already in it. As soon as you jump into it, like, it's a downball snowball effect, but the good kind, right? Like, it's just, it'll build up, and alongside your confidence, alongside your ability to open up. And I think just taking that first step is the hardest, but after you take it, you'll be so thankful that you did, and so kind of appreciative of the fact that you're in it and you're kind of pushing through, because this club is doing amazing stuff. Like, I want to see it everywhere. Like, I feel like it'd be amazing everywhere. So
Yeah. And so take the first step,
Mhm.
which takes a lot of courage, as you know, but in a good way, as you
Mhm.
say. And if there was young men out there that have been thinking about this and want to take the first step in their school, what would you sort of say? What is that first step? What can they do?
Talk to someone. Talk to, whether it's your teacher, whether it's like when we started off, we talked to a couple of teachers, and then we got shut down because there's not, just some people don't have the time. But just keep trying, keep working, and keep, like, try to talk to every single person you can, because you never know where one kind of door might lead to. So I feel like just make sure you're trying your best, because if you're not putting your 100% effort, like, it's just not going to kind of succeed. So just try to push yourself through that little beginning kind of start line, and as soon as you're there, you're pretty much at the finish line, I'd say. So because the goal is just kind of getting out there and talking. So
Thank you for being such a brilliant role model for so many young men out there. Thank you for your courage and your strength and your vulnerability. We will say that out loud. For sure. You're owning it, for sure. And I know I will walk away from this with feeling very inspired. And I think anybody who listens to this will walk away from this feeling very inspired. You are going to do some big things in this life. You are. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your vulnerability. And for being willing to put yourself out there. And happy Ramadan.
thank you.
Happy Ramadan. Yeah. Yeah. What a wonderful time for you. Yeah. So, Mony, I'm done my cup of coffee.
So am I.
And so are you. And enjoy the rest of your Ramadan celebrations for you and your family. And good luck on the rest of your school year. Thank you for being here.
100%. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Take care.
Take care. Bye.